days, the time for one beat of the divine heart, not a second more, before being deprived of his immortality. But even the gods fear death. Eru
Ure,
ta emserut emma abde.
Sfezeref aker, Sfezem ser, Amit nefer amu aset.
Simut bad.
Sfezem ser, Amit nefer amu aset.
Simut bad.
Alright, this lecture I call God's Pen. The reason why I call this God's Pen is because we're going to look at some of the Bible exegesis. What's that? God's pens or pious forgers. So we answer the question, was it God who wrote the Bible or was it forgers? I'll go with the latter. Yeah? And I'll have to prove what I'm saying. You can't just say forgers forged the Bible and then don't prove it.
That's right.
You understand? That make no sense. So I'm going to show you why I think people forge the Bible. This is from the Sage. Yeah? It states, the mendacity of the pious forgers, charlatan and conman. They ask us to acquiesce to the so-called holy textbooks without the need to analyse and evaluate the exegesis of the biblical and the Quranic manuscripts. To acquiesce to fallacious claims of improbable events. I see no difference. If the Jews have Abraham and Sarah, the Muslims have Muhammad and Khadijah, the Christians have Jesus and Mary, I for sure have my beloved Osiris and Isis. I guess the only question to ask is, which myth came first? Sage Jeffrey Amun. Everything on the platter for you.
Yeah, alright, let them come search.
That's right. It's inside the mind, yeah? Okay, glad we got over that shit. Alright, so Mark Twain, what does he say? The Bible is full of interests. It has noble poetry in it, and some clever fables, and some bloody drenched history, and some good morals, and a wealth of vicinity, and up to 1,000 lies. Mark Twain. Mark Twain was an educated man.
Yeah.
Now, why would you say that?
He's read it from pillar to post and studied it.
That's right. And that's his conclusion. The other side? Okay, some of the research that I'm going to bring for you today comes from like the University of Cambridge, the Centre for Computing, King's College of London. Let's get into it. Okay. The Bible contains literature and not historical events. Okay. Are the manuscripts of the Gospel original or copies? Do you know what I'm talking about here?
Was that Mark Matthews and John all that?
We'll get into that too. Archaeology and artifacts evidence found for Exodus. Remember I told you that there's no evidence for Exodus? I found some.
Okay.
So my apologies. I'll show you to you what it is, yeah? The demonization of Egypt culture from biblical literature. Do they use the Bible to demonize our culture?
Yes.
I'll show you that. And the last one, do we have any artifacts or archaeological evidence for Egypt? We'll show that. So let's deal with the first one. The Bible contains literature, not historical events. So we know that for a fact, correct? Because some people like to say the Bible is history. Yeah? It's not historical. It's literature. Yeah? So we deal with the second one. Are there manuscripts for the Gospel original or copies? Let me show you what I'm talking about. Do you know what that is? These are manuscripts that they use to compile your Bible.
Okay.
Right? These sources are from, you can go onto that same university, Cambridge University. They've got some of them in Oxford and they've got some in Manchester. Yeah? This one is called a P45 here. I'm pretty sure that's the Rhineland papyrus. Let me show you how big that is in real life. And it's got words on the back and the front. That's how big it is. That's what completes some of the Book of John.
What? That?
Yeah.
Just that?
Yeah.
It's incomplete, John.
Yeah. Right.
That's what I'm saying to you, like, when you see people come up to you and they're reading scriptures, it gets to a point where you go, what are you reading? These are the manuscripts that compile the Bible. I've got both Hebrew, so-called, Greek, and Egyptian. So I'm going to show you some of the manuscripts that compile your Bible. Yeah? Because I think sometimes when we see the Bible in its state, we just think that's how it was written and that's how the prophets was writing. But there was no photocopy machine back then. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, let's get into that. So we'll find the Christ Cult. This is a book I've got. The Lost Gospel, the Book of Q, and Christian Origins. This is from Burton L. Mack. Peep the sources, because the sources are very important. Yeah? He states, Mack admits that the Christ cult bears close parallels with the Greek cults, which offers their own mythical saviour, and that the Christ myth drew on current Hellenistic and Jewish mythologies. Here again, we might have asked the obvious question, was the Christ myth simply a product of this universal religious tendency of the time? So we're saying, when we look at the scriptures and the manuscripts and the writing around the 1st century or the so-called 1st century, were these things just a thing at the time? Because if you look in Jewish mythology, which is Abraham crossing the sea, Moses crossing the sea, holy fantastic things happening. Then we look into the Greek history and we find the same thing. You have to remember, in the 1st century, the lingua franca at the time was Greek, not Hebrew. So therefore, when the stories were being written, we have to understand how much of the Greek mythologies got introduced into the text. Do you understand what I'm saying? We'll come to that. So people, scholars who are reading it are sometimes looking and thinking, could this just be the typologies of the stories are the same? Could it just be a thing of the time? Who was the Greek? Who was the top pantheon god in Greek? The Greek pantheon.
Zeus.
Zeus.
Zeus, yeah.
Correct. So if I'm looking at the Zeus myth, and I'm looking at the Jesus myth, he's drawing a line to say they're analogous to each other. That's why I said to you, Zeus is Isus in Greek. And some people go, Isus is not Jesus, and I'm like, Isus is Jesus. Do you understand? Okay, so the Bible, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. How much have you heard that before?
Yeah.
You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
Leviticus 20:20. What does it say? If there is a man who commits adultery with another man's wife, one who commits adultery with his friend's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Father's nakedness, both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. This is Leviticus 20. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that if you sleep with another man's girl, both of you are supposed to be stoned to death. That's what the Bible says. Do they still follow that law today? Huh? Why?
Yeah.
The probably looking at times moved on.
Times move on, but who changed the law?
The law's still there because it's real.
Moses brought the law, correct? Jesus come and said, think that I not come to change the law, but to fulfill them. So nobody changed the law. So this is the law.
That's the law.
Correct? And you have this today, even if you get married and you have sex outside your marriage, what do they call it?
Adultery.
Right. So therefore, I should drag you and the girl who you had sex with and stone you to death. But I guarantee you, if I do that today, I'll be arrested.
That's right.
So which law are they asking you to follow?
Theirs.
So it's pointless you spitting out these stories to me in the Bible if you don't follow them. Do you understand that? Let's look at Matthew 5:27-28. What does he say? If you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Wow, is the question. So that means
Yeah, man, it's done that.
when we're at carnival,
Yeah.
all males should be killed. All females should be killed. Because if you see one girl pass in the truck and you go, well, she's nice,
That's it.
you've already lost,
That's
my
right.
friend, and you should be stoned to death. What kind of law are these and who wrote them? It goes contrary to what we believe in. You understand what I'm saying? Let me show you something. A woman caught in adultery. You all know this story. John 8:111. They use certain numbers also when they're talking about certain stories. And you have to understand that with the Bible. When they're talking about certain stories, certain numbers are employed. And if you look at the numbers, they bring you to a certain understanding. Yeah? But we won't go into that today. Jesus returned to the Mount Olives. But early the next morning he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, the teacher of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman has caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses said to stone her. What do you say? It was almost like they're trying to trap Jesus. Yeah? Because if you stone her to death, then you're not the meek and kind Jesus that everybody thought you was. You understand what I'm saying? And if you don't stone her to death, then you've broken the laws of Moses.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
You've heard the story, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they were trying to trap him into saying something that could used against him. But Jesus stood down and wrote in the dust with his fingers. They kept demanding an answer. So he stood up again and said, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust.
Killed it dead.
When the accuser heard this, they slipped away one by one, being with the oldest, and until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Now I could ask several questions in this phase. Do we know what sin is? Because remember I asked this years ago.
Yes, you did.
And I guarantee you now we still don't know.
Yeah.
Sin was another name for the moon, by the way. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's Latin. So, therefore, Jesus said, go and sin no more. What do you think about this story?
What do you mean?
I think it's a real nice story.
Oh,
It is.
good.
Because he got out of it nicely. Everyone went home. The girl kind of got off. Everyone kind of got what they wanted.
Without losing faith.
That's right.
So when he was writing in the sand, was he writing down the sins of the people? That they saw their sins and walked away?
Yes, I think he was. He let them know.
That's why he kept writing in the sand, right?
And then everybody kept on the one each time. Man started walking away
That's right.
But why?
because basically he knew their sins. What he's saying is he knew their sins already. That's why he said.
Those of you
Those
without
who
sin cast the first
was
stone.
So basically, what he was doing is showing him, well, you did this.
So suppose you was at
I don't
home.
know about that because there could have been about 100 people there, and
No, it was just the Pharisees
Support him.
that brought the girl there. Teachers of religious laws.
okay, so probably with that 10 or something. or
That's
8.
right. But what did I just read to you around here?
She should be stoned to death, and the other adulterer should be stoned to death.
It says the adulterer and the adulteress.
Yeah,
Correct? So where was the man in the story?
the man got away.
He wasn't in the story
Why not?
because he wasn't there at the time when they.
It don't matter.
No, because they're supposed to bring him as well.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm
Yeah,
saying-
but where is he? That's the point.
Yeah.
Don't make up why he wasn't there, because that's not in the Bible.
Mm.
Do you understand what I'm saying? But where is he in the crowd? He's not there.
He's not there.
Just a woman.
Mm.
Do you understand? So we look at this story. Most people know this story. But unfortunately, it's not in the original manuscript?
Is it-
What do I mean about it's not in the original manuscript? I'm saying it should not be in the Bible at all. So the question is, who put it there?
The scribe would have to put it there.
Hmm?
The person that wrote that piece.
But who's that?
Whoever
You see the point I'm making?
Yeah,
We don't know these things. But we'll read this off
Okay.
as if it's literal.
Mm.
But in the original manuscripts, this is not there. Let me show you. Professor Daniel Wallace examined the New Testament manuscript stored in the National Archives in Albania last June. He was amazed by what he did not find. The story of the woman caught in adultery, usually found in John 7:53, 8:11, was missing from the three texts and was out of place in the fourth, tracked on to the end of John's Gospel, he states. He goes on to say, this is way out of proportion for manuscripts from the 9th century and following, Wallace said. Once we get into that era, the manuscript starts conforming much more to each other. Thus, to find some that didn't have the story is remarkable. What does he mean? He's saying that from the 9th century onwards, this story start appearing and everything start conforming because they were getting more skill at forging. But in the earlier manuscripts, which is by no means original, these stories are not there. So when people quote me this, and quote, I'm like, the story's not even in the original manuscript. I don't really know what you're quoting. You can't say God inspired somebody to put it in there because we don't even know who put it in there and why it's not there. We don't have no names for the authors. Do you understand what I'm saying? But if I come here and give you something, you'll quickly say, where did you get that from?
That's right.
But you don't ask a question when it comes to the Bible. They just spill the same shit over and over and over again. You can't even tell half of the Christians that that story's not in there. They'll probably chop your head off. So you don't even know what you're talking about. You think this is the tip of the iceberg. I'll go deeper and show you some stories that ain't even in the manuscripts. Now let me explain what the manuscripts are. The manuscripts are texts that was written from so-called 1st century, 2nd century. Now, none of the manuscripts that I'm about to show you is original. Do you understand that? So these manuscripts here, which is Borrowing Writing Egypt, 6th century. Top Writing Egypt, 11th century. This is Cambridge, you can go and look at the source, right? Found in Ben Ezra Synagogue. These are the manuscripts that they were writing the scriptures from. But these manuscripts here are not the original manuscripts.
Could they hold what? Could they holding the original manuscript somewhere else?
They don't have the original manuscript.
Destroyed Alexander.
Burn it.
We don't know if they've been burnt.
They
They don't have the original manuscript. So when you look at this isn't original. Do you understand what I'm saying? So therefore, now when you look at this, and somebody found this, how do you put that into context when you're reading the Bible?
You can't.
Then how do you get these stories? That's the question.
Because just say if that piece of paper was real, and it was thousands of years old, they weren't even born back then. So how can they read it?
I forget about those
Well, they can
but
read it because it's Latin, and some are written in Greek, classical Greek.
Would it be from the hieroglyphs on the walls? And then obviously, like the Greeks translated it, some of it?
That's those things that you're talking about. So we look at these texts and we go, let's read. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Biblical. The Roman Catholic Church requires this story to be considered scripture, and Protestants have not broken with that tradition, even thought it missing from their earliest and most reliable manuscripts. During the 5th century, the church was sorting out what exactly should be in the canon or inspired scriptures. What is it called? Pericope adulte, as it was known in Latin, as it is known at the first period in Greek texts during the period. Although it is alluded to by Greek writers as early as the 2nd century, many scholars agree that this verse are not original to John's Gospel, pointing out that the story interrupts the flow of the verse that comes before and after. The style is also noticeably different from that of John's usual writing. Scholars are cautious about the story of the woman caught in adultery. So they've looked at this work and they say it doesn't look like the original flow of John's work, but it looks like something that's been interpolated or added on to his text. So therefore we have to ask the question, well, who was adding on to John's text? Which scribe was adding on these stories to his text? So therefore you can't sit down and say it was somebody who was inspired by God, because the people who were writing the text don't have their names on the book, on the manuscripts. So it's not like you can give me a bunch of manuscripts. I think the last count manuscripts that they have is 5,565. So you can't look on any of the manuscripts and go, oh, Mark wrote this, because his name's there. None of it is signed and none of it is original. That's a fact. Pious forgeries. That's what they are. We're looking at this manuscript again. What is it? The Psalms in Greek. Because most of the manuscripts were in Greek. That's why they got people reading like the Latin Vulgate, but they didn't go to the Greek.
Okay.
At least it's written on the wall in Kemet. Say that again? Say that again?
You can't do nothing. There's a whole piece going in the corner.
That's what I'm saying. So how you make up stories with these things? How is the Bible complete in the way it's complete when none of the manuscripts match each other and differ from each other? Significantly so. The Christ cult. Who wrote the New Testament? Again, Boulton L. Mack. Professor Mack, Christ cult, is already familiar to us at the earliest and the only recorded response to Jesus before the gospel, declaring Jesus as the Son of God, the throne partner of the deity himself, Lord and sustainer of the universe, pre-existent before the creation of the world, an agent in that creation, redeemer of the world, sin and conqueror of the demon powers, through his death, guarantor of eternal life, through his resurrections from the grave. One has to stand agape at the quantum gap that exists between the mind of someone like Paul and those who saw no more in Jesus than an attorney who made it okay not to wash their hands before eating. End quote. Because you know Jesus told you that it's okay to eat and you don't have to wash your hands. In the scriptures. These are the irresponsible things I'm talking about. What God would tell you that? Now here's the question. Was Jesus at the beginning of creation with God? I'll give you a time to ponder on that.
I say no, straight.
Oh, Jesus doesn't exist.
That's right.
No, no.
So I'll say no.
But you can say no, but when you read the Bible, he said to them, before Abraham was, I was. I think that was John 8:44. So he's saying, before Abraham exists, I exist. Christians will put that on you. What are you going to say next?
Abraham didn't exist either.
Well, you're going to have to prove it. You understand? But it gives you food for thought to say, well, are they saying that Jesus is God?
They didn't say that for a long time.
Some people's been saying it, but some people will say Jesus is not God. He's the Son of God.
Yeah.
Yeah? But you can't have either or either. Either you have the adoption view, where he was adopted by God. Because when he got baptized, what did God say? You're now my what?
Son.
Begotten son. Right? You can't just be my begotten son and then exist in the beginning. I have to adapted you or adopted you at that point where you said, now you're my son. So was he at the beginning or was he adopted by God? This is a question. We look again at some of these manuscripts, Talmudic 110. That's on the flip side. So some of them were written on one side and then they'll flip it over and read it on the other side. You have to remember, no photocopying machine. Correct? So if I'm writing this, Justin, I'm writing it in its proper context, paper and everything at the time, and I say, Delroy needs to know this. How do I send that to him?
You have to write another copy.
Who has to write another copy?
Well, normally, from what I've seen before, there was like, when they show it, there's like a whole load of people in the room, all writing.
Yeah. Where did they show that?
In monasteries, in the
Yeah, they just give you the pictures
yeah,
to create the illusion.
yeah,
That's what I mean about symbolism.
yeah,
But we've gone back into the 1st century, my friend.
yeah.
And it depends on what time you're talking about when they were writing that. But if Paul and Mark and Luke was writing the text, yeah? And I've completed this text, and I say send it to the church in Philippian, what do I send there? Do I send my only copy there?
You wouldn't send your own copy.
They have to write out another copy.
Yeah,
But they have to go keep sending them everywhere and anywhere. They're going to make mistakes, no?
That's the point.
They're going to forget, make mistakes.
You understand?
Yeah.
So if I send my copy, if I'm in Jamaica, and I take my copy and send it to you over there in
And
Barbados,
you can't read the. So you see,
and you've missed out the words because our language have different dialects and yeah, then your translation should be different from mine straight.
Yeah, it's like Chinese whispers, isn't it?
That's right. And then you sent that other copy to where? That means I no longer have the original copy because I've sent it to Barbados. It's not like I went to a photocopy machine and printed and had like several copies. I've sent my only original copy to that church. And what church? What church was around in the 1st century? Was there churches around?
There's temples, but
What temples?
depends on where they are. I don't know.
We don't know of these things if they're temple or churches. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because when they talk to you about the Church of Alexandria, what are you talking about? You went there, you saw Ptah's temple, and you converted it into a church? Do you understand? So when Paul is like, send these church to the apostle of this, who you said, what church are you talking about? This is church, right here. That's what it means, just a gathering. What the way they give you the concept is like there was several churches around. No, they weren't. You're talking like 3rd century onwards. If you even... Well, you got the Christians want to kill you today when you talk about their Bible. You have to understand that your Bible is written by manuscripts that are not complete, differs from each other, and have a lot of variance in them. You understand? What is that? That's the Ryland Papyrus, 52 at John Ryland Library in Manchester, England. Can you see it? It's no bigger than a credit card. What does it say? Script, Greek. Where found? Egypt. What you're looking at there is what is part of the book of John. How did you even question Egypt when I'm looking on scraps as a piece of paper like that? And you have it in a glass case. Now you would say, well, at least they've got the original. It's not original. We don't know who wrote that. Otherwise they'll give it to you in their references. They will say came from Mark, such and such and such, but they don't. They're just like, we don't know what's on it. There's one word that they can identify, which I think means exo, exit. That's it. Like I said, take down the notes and research them. Because I've heavily researched them. Half of their manuscripts don't make sense. That is it up close. Now it might look like a big piece of paper. It's not. It's the side of a credit card. Let's see what Bert, do you know this guy? Bert Denton Ermer is an American New Testament scholar, currently the James A. Gray Distinguished Professor of Religious Studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He's wrote several books. One of his books that I've got here is called Misquoting Jesus. Listen what he says. We have more variants in the manuscript than words in the gospel. Do you understand what that means? Explain what that means to me, Justin. We have more variants in the manuscript than words in the gospel. That means the manuscripts that I've just showed you, there's so much variance in them. It's more words, it's more variance than the words in the gospel. That's to show you that shit. We can't even make head to sense with what's written here. But we have a complete Bible that you would think in your head that came from complete manuscripts, because they keep showing you that in their little artwork, like rolls of manuscripts, and they're like in ancient time taken down. They're not taking down anything. It's scraps of papers they've got. That's it. Let's hear what else he said, which is shocking. He said, not only do we not have the original, we don't have the first copies of the original. We don't even have copies of the copies of the original, or copies of the copies of the copies of the original. What we have is copies made much later. In most instances, there are copies made many centuries later, and these copies all differ from one another. Found in the gospel, even at the stage when they emerge into the light towards the middle of the 2nd century, Jesus is clearly an embodiment of the various theologies and editorial purposes of the evangelists, the faith of the communities they represent. So they're telling you, Mac, that even him emerging in the 2nd century was late. I'm talking 2nd century, bruv. It's nearly 100 and change, so much years before he even started emerging. That's why I'm saying when they say Jesus, I'm not 100% which Jesus they're talking about. You understand? Because there's several Jesuses according to Josephus' work. There was a Jesus according to Seltzer's work when I was going through the Seltzer's class. You remember when I was talking to you and I said, who's Jesus Pandera? You remember that?
Jesus Pandera?
Yeah. You lot, I know you lot haven't had the DVDs, but you lot need to kind of get on it. Because I was going through that class heavy when I was going through Maimonides. Yeah? And I was saying to you, Seltzer's was talking about a guy called Jesus Pandera.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, who is this guy called Jesus Pandera? Is that the Jesus of the Bible?
Yeah, I remember you saying that, yeah.
You remember?
Mm.
But when I ask online, who's Jesus Pandera, everybody goes quiet. When you even try to research Jesus Pandera, you don't get much evidence. Who's hiding this? So I have to keep saying it, repeating it, till people go, what the hell is he talking about? I'm asking, the only person I hear mentioning Jesus Pandera are scholars in that class. When I was reading Celsus, I was wondering who the hell Celsus is talking about, because it didn't fit the character that we read about in the Bible. Only to find out through research that this Jesus existed 80 years before the turn of the century. Not only did he exist 80 years before the turn of the century, Justin, he had 5 disciples that were actually crucified. Now we can start, and then we had another Jesus in the 1st century who was not the Jesus of the Bible. Then we read Josephus' work and we see several Jesuses in there. We don't know which Jesus you're talking about. Jesus Christ is not a name.
Do you think they use the name Jesus just to keep the story going over the centuries?
Well, over the centuries they use, he's a central figure in the Bible. So they would keep using the name. But the thing is, you keep saying Jesus Christ our Lord, and you keep giving him these titles, but the moment I start questioning you on the titles, it gets a bit confusing. Because you'll have to answer me, who was Jesus Pandera? You can either say, oh, he wasn't the real Jesus, but his name was Jesus.
Okay.
And the stories run this similar themes in the story of that Jesus and the so-called Jesus that's supposed to exist 2,000 years ago. Do you understand? And once you see that, you have to kind of start looking at it and saying, well, why is that story kind of matching this story? But Celsus is not critiquing that Jesus, because that Jesus, he didn't say to him in the book of Celsus, he didn't say Jesus Christ, he said Jesus Pandero, who was the son of a Roman, and his mother was a prostitute. And he went to Egypt and learnt magic and came back fooling his friend. This is what Celsus is saying. Well, where did Jesus go from 12 till 30?
Egypt, isn't it?
Some people say, yeah, they think he was in Egypt, but where was his missing life? Where was he educated? Was he educated in Jesus? Because if in Egypt? Because if he was educated in Egypt, he would have come across the foremost scholars at the time. One of them, Philo, would have been his contemporary. He would have read Philo's work. Philo would have met him. But we don't have no evidence in Philo about a man called Jesus. Now, I've read this to you before.
Yeah.
Sometimes Origen denied the literal meaning. For example, he says, could any man of sound judgment suppose that the first, second and third day of creation had an evening and a morning, when there was yet no sun or moon or stars? Could anyone be so unintelligent as to think that God made a paradise somewhere in the east and planted in it with a tree, like a farmer, or that in that paradise he put a tree of life, a tree you can see and know with your senses, a tree you can derive life from by eating its fruit with the teeth in your head? When the Bible says that God used to walk in paradise in the evening, or that Adam hid behind a tree, no one, I think, will question that these are only fiction stories of things that never actually happen, and that figuratively they refer to certain mysteries. It is the same with the New Testament text, which says that Satan took Jesus up on a high mountain from which he could see all the kingdom of earth. So much for the impossible and its symbolic interpretation. This is the fucking early church father. So when Christians are talking to you and saying, God, Jesus took the devil and Jesus held fast and he stood down to the early church fathers are like, how could anyone believe that? So he's saying, if the stories doesn't make sense, there must be a symbolic interpretation to the story. Otherwise, no man in his right mind can't be unintelligent to think that we can say the first day God created the earth, the second day he did that. But he's saying, how can you create the earth and say that these things in the beginning of the Bible, but then in the fourth day you're saying, and now I've created the sun and the moon. Then how was you counting days before? Do you see how absurd the deity looks when you take the Bible literally? Because you can't, like one Justin Martyr said, how are you going to be able to explain the things thereof? You can't. So when you ask Christians them simple things, how did God know the days when he created the sun and the moon on the fourth day? I think it was Mark Twain who said, the best cure for Christianity is for them to read their Bible. Because they don't read it. So in conclusion, if the manuscripts are not original, and we don't have the original, can we speak as them as God's work of evidence? If the authors don't know the gospel, how then can we read the Bible as historical evidence? Third, if scholars agree that the Bible was redacted and changed, was it man or God who made the changes? For the first question, what does it say? Can we then speak as they are God's word? Christians will say what? Just have faith.
Yeah.
You've heard that before, right? Can we look at the Bible as historical evidence?
No.
We cannot. If scholars agree that the Bible was redacted and changed, was it man or God who made the changes?
Man.
Not man. Pious forgers and charlatans. We must get used to that word. Pious forgers and charlatans. This is what Porphyry called them. And he went even worse. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm just being kind. These are pious forgers. None of these make sense. Epicurus, who was a philosopher, he said, a nice life is not possible without what? Wisdom, morality, and justice. Go and see who Epicurus was. So long. There's a heavily content of his Bible. This is what they were saying in the journal, yeah? All bullshit. Anyway, we'll come to the bullshit. Harvard Divinity School, let's hear what they say. Documentary hypothesis, the theory classified formulated by Julius Wellhausen in 1878 will explain the Old Testament. So they were doing a kind of like an overview on some of the stories of the Old Testament in these journals, yeah? So it says, repetition and inconsistencies in the first 5 books of the Bible. What does he say? He says repetition and inconsistencies in the first 5 books of the Bible and the Pentateuch as the result of an original independent source or document have been combined over several centuries. The principal hypothetical sources are J, E, D, and P. What does that mean? That's why the early church fathers said, can any man be so unintelligent that to think that God would create the first, second, and the third day without sun, moon, or stars? It doesn't make any sense. So in academia, these are some of the hypothetical sources that they're telling you that we're still have problems with. If you still have problems with it, then how can you be out there in church teaching it like it's real? I mean, like I said, you can go and keep the sources, yeah? Jedi mind trick, I call it. These sources. You just have to take off the P and interchange it with an I.
But I did think of Jedi.
Do you understand? Because it is a Jedi mind trick. Because you're reading the literature as historical facts. It's not historical. And this is what most Christians need to know. Reading the Bible has nothing to do with history. It might have some hints of history in there with some fables put on it, but it's not historical, because we don't find a lot of the things that they speak about in the Egyptian texts. We don't find it in the Egyptian literature. And I've showed you that with Dr. Inan, in his work, Dr. Asman, none of them find these stories in there. He goes on to say, what's a prophet?
Is a prophet someone who can
Someone that
speaks about the future?
No, someone that got spoken to.
A word of Greek origin meaning what?
Spokesperson.
That's it. Anyway, the Son of Man, a phrase that in the Hebrew Bible means what?
Human beings.
In Daniel 17:13, it is used of someone who is given universal rule. The identity of the person is?
Disputed.
Why would you dispute that? Do you know where I'm getting the source from? You can see it right up there, Harvard Divinity School. Why would today they have this, the Son of Man has been disputed? You see? So if you go on the street, tell me if I'm wrong or right, and somebody says, the Son of Man has come, what are we speaking about?
Well, most people think it's Jesus, isn't it?
That's right.
That's right.
But in academia, we don't really know who the identity is of that person who you call the Son of Man. And why would you call him the Son of God if the Bible calls him the Son of Man? Isn't it that saying that he's the Son of a man? If it's telling you that it means a human being.
Yeah, Son of Man.
So how
He's a
then
human
can
being.
he be Son of God unless you're saying that God is a man?
Well, yeah.
Is that what they're saying?
It's confusing.
That's what I mean. And God said in that same Bible, I am not the author of confusion. So why is this so confusing? It's confusing because I'm letting you know how you should actually pimp the sources. You don't run round to other people on the street. They're not academic.
Mm.
Do you understand? But when you look at the sources, it will tell you what these things mean. So I know that the Son of Man, let me not say anything more. King James. Let's look at Proverbs 8 verse 4. Unto you, O man, I call my voice is to the sons of man. That's in the books of Proverbs. Can you see where it here is? It says here, sons of man. Please, while I eat this biscuit, tell me what it means. Let's have a wild guess.
It's not to God, it's to the sons of man. Beings. So he's talking to human beings.
Okay, basically it's to everyone.
Yeah.
So they're talking to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the book of Proverbs.
Okay.
Right? This is the New International Version. Same verse. It says, to you, O people, I call out, I raise my voice to all mankind.
Same thing.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
No, it's not the same thing.
I think it is.
Exactly.
Mankind,
It's not the same thing.
it's not the same thing.
Oh, because of the words of mankind at the end.
The reason why they
Sons
move
of
that
man.
is because when people read that, they instantly think Jesus.
Jesus.
And if they don't think Jesus and there's an extra S on there, because there is, then they go, well, who are they talking about? So in the new version, they just remove that confusion. You understand that?
Yeah.
And the next one, what they call the NLT, the New Living Testament, it actually changed it altogether. I raise my voice to all people. So from the original text, the Son of Man, to all mankind, to all people. These variances make difference. It makes a difference to how the text is trying to convey itself.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? So why would you keep changing it?
Maintain confusion.
This is why, when we go back, it says the identity of this person is disputed. Because I said to you, that is the books of Proverbs. So who's the Son of Man? We don't know.
We don't know.
So why do Christians so confidently tell you that it's Jesus? When in academia, we're still disputing his identity.
I maybe.
Okay, well, because it's Proverbs and most of it was written in Greek, that's me there reading my Bible. I think it's who?
Athena, this is Athena, the Greek goddess speaking. Okay.
So in Proverbs, which is the book of wisdom, when you see Greek art, when I showed you before, on the other DVDs, are the ones that I haven't done yet, what did I say? Didn't I show you Athena coming out of Zeus's head?
Mm.
Who's Athena? Athena is the goddess of wisdom. So when you read the Proverbs, who's actually speaking? Is it Athena, the Greek goddess of speaking?
You said it would, if the original text is Greek, then it would be.
This is my point. Just like the other day when I said to my girlfriend, Orion's in the Bible and Orion's Greek mythology. And she's going, yeah, but what difference does that make? But the moment she starts looking on it and researching, she's going, I see what you mean. And I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It's Greek mythology. So when we read Proverbs in the Greek, who else would they be writing about? They'll be writing, if me and you are writing, me and you'd be writing about Isis, Horus. That's what we know.
Aphrodite.
Who did the Greeks know?
All their gods.
All their gods.
That's right. So when I'm reading Proverbs, wisdom, who is speaking here? Is it Athena?
Wisdom is Tahuti.
Yeah, no.
Jehuti.
That's right.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say to you.
You understand? Again, Professor Michael D. Coogan, the Old Testament, 2nd edition. Let's hear what he's got to say. The biblical figure of Moses has been the centre of fascination for over 2,000 years. But what do we really know about him? Was he a real person? Did the Exodus truly happen? Or is it the story of the Pentateuch, a mythical tale written centuries after the alleged event? Why does Moses' story resemble that of many other lawgivers and legendary individuals? Why are there so many elements of sun and wine god myths in the story of Moses? What does the focus of the serpent in the story signify? Who was Yahweh, the Elohim? Question mark, question mark, question mark. This is not me writing the shit. You can go and research who Michael D. Coogan is. Why are they asking these questions? The question here is, why is he asking who was Yahweh and Elohim? Oh, you look there, taking that reference?
His name.
Alright. No problem taking that. We'll be here all night. Okay, so let's see why he's asking these questions. The Deuteronomic Code, according to modern scholars, the core of the book of Deuteronomy in chapter 12 to 26 consists of ancient laws that differ in many details from those found in the book of Exodus and Leviticus. One inconsistency. That's what you call an inconsistency. The laws are different in Deuteronomy in chapter 12 to 26 consisting of ancient laws that differ in many details from those found in the book of Exodus and Leviticus. He goes on to say, Elohim, the word, Elohim, the Hebrew word for God, or what?
Gods.
Which, although plural in form, is often used as a title for Yahweh and is translated God. Inverted commas. You see that? This is from Harvard Divinity School, dude. What was the question that we're going to ask at the bottom? The question is, the Hebrew word for God or gods is the word Elohim. But I've been saying to you from years ago, Elohim is plural.
That's right.
Do you understand? So how did you translate that into God in the Bible? It doesn't make any sense. It's a misnomer. Because then you have to ask, so is the word Yahweh plural? We don't have a monotheistic beginning. We have a polytheistic beginning. Many gods. So therefore, it's a misnomer for them to translate the word Elohim into God. He knows that. That's why he said it's a plural noun. It's a female noun with a masculine male termination with the yod and the min. So therefore, if we're reading the Bible in its context, the Bible should be read, in the beginning, gods and goddesses came down. Now imagine that.
They're going to be one of the viewers, the gods and goddesses who came down.
Exactly. So instead they said, fuck that. Let's just put God. And now you think it's a monotheistic God. Because you hear Christians go, we've only got one God. You hear Islam go, we only believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One God.
They all said that.
Yeah? But from the words and the language, it's not one God. It's plural. So you shouldn't be using the word God there in the first place. It should be gods, not or gods. It should be gods. Can you see how they're tricking us? These are deep subjects. It might seem funny, but these are deep subjects. Because many Christians don't know these things. But they spew it at you as if to say they know it. They don't know it. They don't study the language. Most of them are ignorant. Most of them are unintelligent. They don't read their own book, but they're here dictating to you what they think that you should know. They don't have a library, they don't read. Why do you think I need to sit and listen to them? I don't need to sit and listen to them. All of that 2,000 years bullshit that you've been teaching us, that's gone through the window, love. Now he's saying, what the hell? Because how can you change this word to mean what it means? And that's why he put God's in inverted bracket, Justin, because he's saying it shouldn't really be translated like that. Do you understand what I'm saying? And up to this day, when I'm asking the Hebrews, I asked one the other day, could you explain to me what the word Elohim means? No answer. You know from when I've been asking them that? But here we have, archaeologists are digging up Bible stories. Archaeology is an important science that confirms the historical accuracy of the Bible. Since the Bible refers to hundreds of sites, kings and places, we would expect to find evidence from on-site excavation. And this is exactly what we found. The Bible is the most historical accurate book of history on earth. Read the Bible daily. Now, I looked on this Christian website, which is a major Christian website, and I'm thinking to myself, what did you find? So he shows you a little picture there digging. I could do that.
That could be any rock.
Yeah, I can go anywhere, put on some clothes and gloves and go and take a picture like that. And you think I'm an archaeologist. I don't even know who this dude is. And you keep saying, I'm glad that they said archaeology is a very important factor. Because we have not, a matter of fact, I have found some evidence for the Exodus. Yeah? But when we go to Egypt, that's what we find. We don't need to speculate whether there's a temple here or not. Do you understand what I'm saying, Justin? I don't need to be digging something, looking for King David's temple, and we can't find it. Unless they found Solomon's temple, show it to me. What have they really found? Nothing. But day after day when they're digging up your ancestors' thing, what does it say? The interior of the royal priest Hunefer tomb, the facade built with beautiful blocks of limestone engraved with hieroglyphs, is perfect condition. The relief and pigments of the wall have survived 4,300 years and will finally be able to tell their tales. With a delicate brush, Faisal Dubi carefully clears off the face of Hunefer. Can you see the niggers that they're unearthing?
I can dip it. Yeah. Some of that writing's gonna go missing.
That's right. And you won't get to read that. You see, what the Christians done, they condemned their own self. When they came into the first century and they wanted to get rid of your history, there was so much hieroglyphs and around, they call them hieroglyphs. But there's so much of it around, they couldn't deface all of it. So what they started doing was covering it up with sand. And guess what? The sand preserved it. Do you understand? Instead of them destroying you, the sand preserved the whole shit. So now when he's brushing off the wall, you can see clear Maganeta as bright as day. If there's a God, he knows what he's doing. Because in the end time he knew you were coming to look back on this shit and condemn them. Instead of them doing archaeology on your site, I'd like them to find King David's temple. I'd like them to find Solomon's temple. These big temples and stories.
That's a clear afro.
Well, well, you can see it right there, right?
It's a clear afro.
But let's, it's the people painted themselves like that because the Nile Valley was black. Yeah? So it could be a white man, but he just painted himself like that. Yeah? So let's go with what they say. Because we're still stupid. But here we have conclusive attestation for the Exodus wheel. So now we can prove
one wheel, yeah?
that the Exodus happened.
One wheel.
That's what, yeah.
No, but there was hundreds and thousands of soldiers and chariots. And
Well, we found one, so that's it.
that's not sorry. That's all. That could be anything
But
traveling in a boat.
this is what they're trying to convince you with. Do you know how much money they spent looking for this shit?
okay, that wheel managed to last that long by itself, yes?
Mhm.
So therefore, others, there should be more than one wheel.
Well, there not should just be more than one wheel. There should be bones,
Yeah,
skulls,
everything,
chariots,
everything.
everything. But we come up with one wheel, and they didn't even find this in the Red Sea.
Oh, okay.
Or is it the Reed Sea? We're not really too sure. But this is the archaeological evidence that they found. Anything after that, they go to the Bible or they go to the wars in Egypt. And the Bible is not a primary source.
That's a wagon wheel, man.
One wagon wheel. And they take pictures of it. When he brought this back to his colleagues, they looked at it and asked him, where's the wheel? And he said he couldn't take it up because it was so, if they lift it up it would have just disintegrated, so they just took the picture.
Is it really?
Everyone just walked out.
Of course.
You understand? They didn't even pay it too much mind. But go and see how much money they're spending to have these expeditions just to try to convince you that an exodus took place. We know it didn't take place. It's a tales of two halves. What does it mean? Now we're going to see they don't have nothing outside of the Bible. Let's look at some of their texts inside the Bible. This is the Quran. So I'm going to give you different versions of the Quran and what it says about the Exodus. Yeah? So here we have Sahai, International. We took the children of Israel across the sea, and Pharaoh and his soldiers pursued them in tyranny and enmity until they drowned. When drowning overtook him, he said, I believe that there is no deity except that whom the children of Israel believe, and I am of the Muslims. Let me read that again, because that didn't even sound right. When drowning overtook him, he said, I believe that there is no deity except that in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am of the Muslims. Now I'm reading this and I'm thinking to myself, but the Muslims weren't even around. Why would the Pharaoh... Huh? Oh shit, it's gone dead.
After you sit down.
Sorry?
You know when you get pins and needles
Yeah.
because I had my legs crossed like that, I got up, I was just like, oh. Blood stop circulating. Yeah, so...
Stand up for 3 seconds, then...
Huh?
You're supposed to stand up for 3 seconds.
And then, oh, okay, that's it. Alright, so I just want you to see this bit, yeah? And I am of the Muslims. Okay, let's just move on before we even tackle that, yeah? So the second one, because they've got a few Qurans, so I want to show you all of the Qurans that they've been using, yeah? Pick out. So you don't have to read the whole thing, but can you see it here where it says the sea? Can you see where it says the sea?
Yeah.
I've highlighted, focus on the words that are in red.
Yeah.
I've highlighted some of them. So we go, and it says, I believe that there is no Allah save him in whom the children of Israel believe.
What?
And I am those who surrender unto him.
No Muslims go agree with that.
Hmm?
Allah, what's it? I believe that there is no Allah save him.
Who the Muslims?
No, who Israel. Who the children of Israel believe.
Yeah.
And I am of those who surrender unto him.
Yeah. Do you understand that? Because my Quran's there. Like I had to look at the damn thing before I actually done everything. Yeah? Now, it says, I believe that there is no Allah save him in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am those of who surrender unto him. Again, it states, Yusuf Ali, in his text, it says, I am of those who submit to Allah in Islam. Can you see that? Okay. This is the same flood story. And it says, we took the children of Israel across the sea. Pharaoh and his hosts followed them in insolence and spite. At length, when overwhelmed with the flood, he said, I believe that there is no God except in him who the children of Israel believe, which must be Yahweh, and in those who submit to Allah in Islam. But there was no Islam. 1300 BCE. if they're purporting that was the date of the Exodus, or 1400 BCE. There was no Islam. There was no God called Allah. So why would the Pharaoh be using these words? And how do you know he said it? When he's drowning. Who recorded that? These are the things that they want us to acquiesce to, but it's nonsense. But let's go on. I've highlighted the word sea, the sea, the sea. Again, we still have more Qurans. See where it says the sea? And we believe, and I am those who submit. Again, Muhammad, the sea, saved the Pharaoh and his army pursued the children of Israel with wickedness and hate until the Pharaoh was what? So in the Quran, the Pharaoh drowned. But in the Bible, this Egyptologist was trying to tell me that he didn't drown. Remember now we're looking at the exegesis of their texts. So did the Pharaoh drown or didn't he drown? This is what I was talking to the guy, you lot saw the video when I was talking to the guy at Hyde Park?
Yeah.
When I was saying, this is what I was asking him to explain. And they're stuttering. Because it says here, I declare that there is no God but the one in whom the children of Israel believe, and I have submit to the word of God. I don't know why Muslims are saying that. So you're saying you submit to the Jewish God too, correct? I know it was Jews who wrote this shit, yeah? But anyway, we'll play along. Again, we look at another one, Muslim. None has the right to be worshipped but he in whom the children of Israel believe. And I am one of the Muslims, those who submit to Allah's will. But the Jews don't worship Allah. Some of them might say it's the same phonetic word and Allah and Elohim means the same, and they might take you down that road. But the Jews do not worship Allah. And why the hell would the Pharaoh be shouting that out when he's drowning? There was no Muslims around or no God called Allah. So why would the Pharaoh be saying that? So we can see from here that the Quran had to be written by somebody who was illiterate. Do you understand? There's no angel that came to know Muhammad to write no bullshit like what you're reading. That's why I said to you, when we asked them the question, how then did Thutmose III die? And we find him in the Valley of the Kings. They go, well, in their commentary, his body got washed up the next day. The Egyptians took him, put him in the Valley of the Kings, dressed him, and that's why he was there. I mean, if you want to believe in spookism, believe. But I'll knock this straight out the water in a minute. So we go to our next one, Arbery, and he says, and I believe that there is no God but in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am those that surrender. So basically they're saying the same thing, right? And they all say the children of Israel over the sea. You see that? Okay. The Pharaoh's body. They discussed the Pharaoh's body. What did they say? Most of them. This day shall we save thee in the body, that thou mayest be a sign to those who come after thee. But verily, many among mankind are heedless to our signs. So the Muslims were saying, yeah, the Quran speaks about that. We left the Pharaoh's body for a sign. We drowned him, then we took him out, put him back in the Valley of the Kings for a sign of the time. I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds reasonable, I suppose. But most of the Qurans is saying the same thing. So I'm just giving you different sources. Okay. Now, I put Amenhotep III because some Christians say it was Amenhotep. I can't really get them to pin down on who we're talking about. Some say it's Amenhotep, some say it's Thutmose III, and some just unconnaton, they come up with all kind of phases as who the Pharaoh was, correct? But we can show you that this Pharaoh here, we have his body, correct? It's not found in the deep Red Sea. We have them. Again, civilization archaeology, Pharaoh skeletons, 18th dynasty, New Kingdom. The thing is, it would have been nice one time if I can come up and see Abraham bodies found, David or Solomon, any one of the biblical patriarchs. I would be happy if they would expose their skeletons like that, but they can't because none of them exist. This is for, like one Hebrew says, what did he say? God didn't want man to dig up the patriarchs, so he took most of them to heaven.
Very nice.
Now, yeah, it's nice. I mean, I can write a child's story. I mean, if you're playing with children, that's the questions you ask. Because it's child's play. It doesn't make any sense. Our ancestors did things so when they go back into history, we can verify that there was a man who lived, call that name. No spookism. Primary source. Where's their primary source? Can't find any. We go to the British Museum. Primary source again. We will see the big statues. The first one that you see in the British Museum is that one. Did you want a picture of that one?
Yeah, cool.
The African standing there. As you walk through the British Museum, what do you see? Do you not see that? Have you not been to the British Museum? You've not been to the British Museum?
I've been there, but it's been a while.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
trying to remember.
Okay. And you said you haven't been to Hyde Park neither. That was a stand. Have you been to Hyde Park? Speakers going on.
Yeah.
You?
Not speakers.
I'm gonna arrange these things because you have to go down there. This is where I got my training back in the days. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So we look on the vase. What do we see? Primary source. Can we read? I know some of you like to break that shit down. Some new coming today, it's just like, make the letter. What would he have? We have Ra, son of Ra. In here, how do we know his name? What did I say earlier?
Exposed.
Amun Hotep III. Remember when I said to you on the board, when I write this name, see? Amun, can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Amun, and this symbol written here, Hotep. You don't have to, when you write the P and the H to make the sound, Hotep, you can simply write that. Amenhotep III. Son of Amenhotep III. What do we have here? Neter Nefer. So some people say the beautiful God, but Neter is not really God. Even though they translate, is that right?
Yeah, it's really like
Okay, even though they translate it like that. They like to say it's God, but it's not really. Then when we look in this cartouche, what do we have? You see when you see this bowl? Like a bowl?
that. Oh yeah, he said it's loaded.
That's correct. It means Lord. So who's this? Neb Ma'atra. Because this is Ma'at.
Right.
Do you understand? So you don't class the deity name first. That's not how you read the Medinetta. You say Neb Ma'atra. Then we look at this. Who's this? Teti. So we can look in the Shanot and we can say, okay, well, we can read their names. What does it say underneath? Jet on di Seneb. Given life and health. We don't need them to fake us no more because we can tell our ancestors' story. This is what you call empirical data, artifacts. I don't read nothing where it says Aju'u Solomon, Asamu David, Asamu Abraham. We don't have nothing for them. Not an absolute drop of evidence. None for Moses, none for David, and this is what my book is based on. Killing the 5 emperors, that's what I was going to call it first. Yeah? We don't have no evidence for none of them. But even on our artifacts, we can look and see their names. And they put their names in circle, because what? They wanted to live for eternity. How did they know that concept that we will be still calling their names today? Because I'm calling their names. Amenhotep III, his name's still ringing after 4,000 years. His children are still calling it. So their names are living for eternity. You understand? Okay. A king of ancient Egypt. Free dictionary. A king of ancient Egypt. 1. A tyrant. That's what you get when you're looking at the dictionary about your ancestors. This is the demonization from what we get from the Bible, demonizing African culture. So when you look up the word Pharaoh, you get a tyrant. We could supposed to be writing to them saying, you need to remove that shit. Because how do you get a tyrant? You probably only get the tyrant because they're like, well, they inflict the children of Israel. So they were tyrants. But when we go to the Merriam dictionary, what do we get? A ruler of ancient Egypt, a tyrant. What's a tyrant? The full definition of a tyrant, an absolute ruler, unrestrained by law or constitution, an usurper of sovereignty, a ruler who exercised absolute power, oppressively or brutally.
Mistake.
You don't see that's a mistake?
God doesn't do it no anyway.
But we today will go into their dictionaries, still use them, and still go right. So any one of your kids look up Pharaoh, that's the definition they get. Tyrant. All of the pharaohs? How much as pharaohs did we have in the king's list? 76. All of them were tyrants? But you leave that in your dictionaries?
Well, more than Henry VIII.
He doesn't even fit tyrant. That's too good a word for him. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. I won't go to the top because we know what the tyrant means. But let's read Exodus 15:4 when they keep talking about the Pharaoh drowned. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. The Lord is a what?
Warrior.
The Lord kills. This is the problem I was talking to you about, the sources. One minute he's a God of love. The next minute he's a warrior. Which one is it? So it says the Lord is his name. Really? Anybody can be called Lord. I told you already that Baal means Lord. Bilali means my Lord. Baali means my Lord. Who am I talking about? Any one of the House of Commons, I could use that name. Baali. Why do you think the Queen has her castle in?
Balmoral.
Nothing's changed apart from your perception that they've given you. Baali means my Lord. So why is Baal an evil god? Why was he demonized in the Bible? We go on. It says, the Pharaoh chariot and his army, he has cast into the sea. Now we know that when the Pharaoh's going out, the Pharaoh's normally the one up front. Correct? Okay. So the guy, the Egyptologist, he said they were thrown off. And the choice of his officers are drowned in the Red Sea. So I'm thinking to myself, when I read that, I'm thinking he might have a point because it says the choices of his officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep covered them and they were drowned into the depths like a stone. So I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe he's got a point because it says that his choicest officers and maybe, I don't know, maybe the Pharaoh did get thrown off. Then I went to Psalms. His loving kindness endures forever and made Israel pass through the midst of it. For his loving kindness is everlasting. But he overthrew Pharaoh, and this is the word he meant. Overthrew him, like I'll save Pharaoh, but I'll drown the rest. I don't know how this happened. Because if you're going through the Red Sea, children of Israel, the Pharaoh's in front, then you threw off the Pharaoh, and then you drown the rest. You would have to be on the side where the children of Israel are. They would have just beat the shit out of you. Because all your armies are drowned and you're standing up there in the midst of them. You understand? It couldn't work. I mean, it's stupid, but I'm just trying to ascertain how they work it out. But it says, the Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea. But he overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea. Now this makes it different. For his loving kindness is everlasting. And they keep repeating this because it's a mantra. God is killing, but he's telling you, my love and kindness is everlasting. But he's killing your ancestors. Do you understand? Okay. To him who leads his people through the wilderness, for his love and kindness is everlasting. It says it like 3 times throughout the phrase. So his love and kindness is to the Jews, but to the Africans, he killed them. And it specifically tells you that the Pharaoh was killed. Now the question is, who's the Pharaoh? I'm going to get into that. Here we have Moses coming down from the mountains, and we've seen these images.
I love that movie.
Yeah? This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Here are they started. The historical problem, historical views of Moses. Why would it be a problem? That's the question. You don't start off by saying, I didn't write that shit up there. That's how you get it in the encyclopedia. There's a problem from the start. Few historical figures have engendered such desperate interpretation as Moses. Early Jewish and Christian tradition consider him the author of the Torah, laws or teaching, also called the Pentateuch, 5 books, comprising of the first 5 books of the Bible. And some conservative groups still believe in Mosaic authorship. Some of them. But obviously the person's writing this just go, this is bullshit. Yeah? What was necessary here?
The writings on the stone.
The writings on the stone. What writings is it?
Greek.
No.
It's Sumerian.
Paleo-Hebrew. Yeah? So Moses went up on the mountain and God wrote in Paleo-Hebrew.
But he wouldn't have, because you said this is what was got him from teaching. He lived in Egypt for that 40 years or however long it was.
Right.
So therefore the only language he would have known would have been Egyptian.
That's correct. What God wrote to him, let's just say God touched him in his forehead and he could understand. Let's just go with their fables. What God wrote in Paleo-Hebrew, this is a problem. So you can see texts like that and they'll show your grandmother and those of us who are, I wouldn't say ignorant, but just don't have the means to research. And we'll see that and go, yeah, God's writing on the thing. But when did Paleo-Hebrew come around? And where does it come from? This opinion coincides with the finding of modern archaeologists who maintain that around the year 1800 BCE, Egyptian hieroglyphics had inspired Phoenicians living and working in Egypt to develop Proto-Canaanite, a phonetic alphabet. Proto-Canaanite then evolved as Paleo-Hebrew and was the script used by all the people of the Middle East, including Phoenicians, the Canaanites, the Moabites, and also the Hebrew. Moabites is where the Moors say they come from. The Hebrew. Archaeologists have unearthed Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions on stones and pottery dating as far back as the 12th century BCE. Now, we have some archaeological evidence that they were writing Paleo-Hebrew. The Moabite stone. What does it say here, Justin?
9th century.
9th century BCE. Now tell me, if we can go back to the 9th century BCE, then how was Moses writing in hieroglyphs? How was he? Moses' date is 1450 or 1425 BCE. That's the date biblical chronology gives you, as I showed you earlier. How the hell do you only find the Moabite stone 9th century BCE? That means if they were writing hieroglyphs, God came down with the law, and I'm teaching you. What am I teaching you? I'm teaching you fucking Paleo-Hebrew. Correct? Why didn't God just say, Moses, I'll just translate it in Medinetta because that's what you know. You were brought up in Egypt for all this time. Why change the language? Where are the broken tablets that he threw down? Do we have any of it? No. When you go to the British Museum, do you find any artifacts belonging to them? No. The only evidence they have of anything is the literature. And the literature is not historical. Again, what did they say? Chronology is yet an open question. What does it say? It's an open question. there be no certain monumental evidence for Israel staying in Egypt, apart from the Menneptah, which they say has got Israel written down. Again, they're looking in Egypt to validate themselves. And we already debunk that Menneptah Stela. It does not mean Israel. But they'll try to make out like it says Israel. Well, let's just go with that. So it's talking about Menneptah ward off a great invasion of Libyans and allied with pirates from Asia Minor and so forth and so forth. You can read the rest if you want. Most of it is just citation and references. So we go to the Exodus. Later settled in the city of Avaris, they choose for their chief an Hippolytan priest by the name of Asasif, subsequently called Moses. Rising in rebellion against Egypt, they were defeated by the departure under the leadership of Moses of the Israelites from the land of Egypt. Biblical data. So who is this guy called Asasif? I heard one Hebrew go, "Are you looking for that man called Asasif?" I was going, right. I'm thinking they must have found some evidence that Moses exists. But then when I look on the date, I'm thinking, well, how the date don't match up for a start. And who is Asasif? So we have to go back into Akhenaten, into his time period, and go, let's see if what they were talking about was right. Is this the Pharaoh of the Exodus? They're not ruling that out because we know there was 2 exoduses from Egypt. One where Athmos runs out the Canaanites, the second when Akhenaten's left with his followers.
Yes.
And one of his followers was called what? Asasif. So if we look into the story and we start seeing the familiarity, subsequently his name was called Moses, you go, I wonder which Moses this is. But he was a high priest of Egypt. So did they get the story mixed up?
They shoot him for their devices.
Then we go again and we say, well, could it be Akhenaten? Is this the Moses of the Bible? Because when you read, I've got his book somewhere here now. I think his name is Muhammad Ahmed. He's wrote a book called Moses being Akhenaten. It's somewhere here, somewhere down here, but I can't remember. But this is what enough of them have to come to conclusion, because they're like, well, which Exodus did these Israelites move from? Was it the second one or was it the first one? So the king of the so-called second Exodus, Akhenaten. That was the second Exodus. So we don't know. A lot of people were because Exodus is a Greek word, it just means to exit. It's not even Hebrew. Do you understand what I'm saying? So enough people was exiting and going to and from Egypt. But when we read the commentary on the Mishnah entitled Katab el Suraj, it says, the object of the work last mentioned is explained by Maimonides in the following terms. I have composed this work neither for common people, nor for beginners, nor for those who occupy themselves only with the law as it is handed down without concerning themselves with its principles. The design of this work is rather to promote the true understanding of the real spirit of the law, to guide those religious persons who, adhering to the Torah, have studied philosophy and are embarrassed by the contradictions between the teachings of philosophy and the literal sense of the Torah. Maimonides, on his commentary on the Torah. So what is he saying? It says, who study philosophy and are embarrassed by the contradictions between the teaching of philosophy and the literal sense of the Torah, i.e., God created the heaven and the earth on the first and the second and the third day, but there was no moon, star and sun. You couldn't bring that to him. He'd be like, it's nonsense. What God would even do that? When me and you know that the sun has gone down, the moon has come out, because the moon, Eve, comes out in the evening, then we know it's either time for eating food or we soon go to our bed. So these two deities, the sun and the moon, are in control. You understand? Because they dictate how you move. Again, we read, the Pharaoh in ancient Egypt was the political and religious leader of the people. Was a what? He was a political and religious leader of the people and held the title Lord of the Two Lands, Nebtawi, we say. The word Pharaoh is Greek, from the Egyptian paro or pero, which was the designation for the royal resident. The earlier monarchs of Egypt were not known as pharaohs, but as kings. The honorific title of pharaoh for a ruler did not appear until the period known as the New Kingdom. That was the period of Akhenaten. Sorry. The New Kingdom were addressed as Your Majesty by foreign dignitaries, and members of the court as brothers by foreign rulers. Both practices were continued after the king of Egypt came to be known as Pharaoh. So, they weren't known as pharaohs. They were known by either their known names, or they had like 5 names. Nebtawi, Lord Horus, and those kind of names, yeah? Okay. So now, we've gone through, we find that there's no original manuscripts in the gospel. We've went through that. I know Shu wasn't here when we went through that, yeah? We find out that the manuscripts are not original, and we find out that they're bad copies. Okay, so we can get rid of that. We don't find any archaeological evidence for the Exodus apart from the wagon wheel that I showed you. Correct? Okay, we can get rid of that. Is the word Pharaoh found in the Medinetta? Shu shaked his head and you said no.
What's it called? The Great House.
Right. Because I went through that the last class, right?
Yes.
Okay. What I didn't like what I did with that class is because I didn't have enough time, I just kind of let you lot viewed it in the book, where I would probably like to explain that. You understand what I'm saying? Because it can be seen as like pseudo. You're just saying it, but you're not really explaining it. You understand? So let's look on it. Pharaoh Karnak. You don't have to read this whole thing. I put I put writings in red that are important because sometimes I get you lot to read too much, and I think sometimes it just does your brains in. Yeah? But it just says Egyptian Pa, Great House, originally the royal palace in the ancient Egypt. Starting in the 18th dynasty, 1539 to 1290 BC, by the 22nd dynasty and further, it was never the king's formal title, though its modern use as a generic name for Egyptian kings is based on the usage of the Hebrew what? So therefore, every time we go back to verify what our ancestors was doing, we have to go back to the Hebrew Bible. But the Hebrew Bible is not historical. So why do I need to go back to the Hebrew Bible? I'm not Hebrew. I didn't cross over from anywhere. Do you understand what I'm saying? So therefore, I don't need to keep referring to their text. When we go back, we know that they have titles such as Horus, the 2 ladies, Nebet, Golden Horus, the king of upper and lower. So that's when you see it right at the king's list, when you said Nasit Biti. That's the upper and lower. Son of Re, when I showed you on the vase where it says Sarah, that's how it would be written. Son of Re, or you can say the Son of God. The last name was given to him at birth and others at coronation. What do we see here? Can you see the symbol here? Like a little necklace and a sun above it. Mira. It means one light ray. How do we know who this is? We can see his name up here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Thutmose the third. This symbol here, you see that? I know it's not clear, but can you see that symbol here? It means mess. It means born of. So when you see Thutmose, we say Thutmose because it's English, but Thutmose, it means born of. That would have been part of Moses' name. You understand what I'm saying? I know I'm going to do a Medinetta class just to give you like a basic understanding of the language, because I could see like enough of you like would like, yeah? But I said that there's enough to go in it because you have to put the text in, and it's Medinetta text and enough goes into it. But anyway. So now I want to show you properly. Yeah? House, not house. Castle. Or just what Justin had in his book, Hawut, temple, tomb, enclosure. Can you see that? Okay. When we have the square without the line underneath it, it means a house in development or a house under construction. When we put the stroke underneath it, then it's a house. Yeah? Then we have this symbol, which is per, which means treasury or White House. But some people will put this there and say it means pa'a or pa'a, pharaoh. That's incorrect. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that in the dictionary, and it doesn't mean that in Gordon. What do you call it? Gardner's dictionary. So when we look at this T3 and we see that underneath like that, we know it means the White House or Treasury. When we come to this symbol, O29, which is that, attached with this one, this symbol means great. So if we attach this symbol onto this symbol, then it just means great temple. I've never really seen this symbol attached to this here, but some people might do it. I've never seen it, unless it's on the temple walls, right? But if you attach that under here, then it becomes a great house. And then it becomes Pa'a, which is Pharaoh, great house. But most of the house, like you can see here, this symbol and this symbol is the same. The only difference with this one is that, can you see that? Like a loaf of bread? It's T. It normally represents the female. So most of the houses that you see, or the temples, were actually female. Because when you walk in, you're walking into the womb. This is what I was telling you years ago when I was saying to you about the church.
Yes.
You remember those teachings? And I was saying when you walk up to the church, the pastor is right up front. And then when you see up front on the altars, you'll always see candle. It represents the soft light in the dome. Do you understand? This is where this come from. So when you see Neph symbol, you'll always see like a symbol like this with a thing on it, like this, to burn incense in. Because the Egyptians were fascinated with that. Yeah?
So I think I remember reading somewhere that whenever they were going to erect a temple, they have to pray to like a female deity for her, like, her permission and her blessing to have the works completed.
Okay,
So-
that was good, but you should have cite the source.
Mm.
Yeah, because that's what we do sometimes. I get into that. You read, and I'm like, oh shit, I get that shit. Where did I get that shit? But it's good to cite the source because that kind of slight information that you use, I could use it right here.
I'll get it for you. I remember already. I'll get it for you.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's what I mean, because this is why, like I said, we had the most highest respect for our females. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because through her, life comes. So when we were building temple, it was like walking back into the womb of the mother, being reborn. This is where all these concepts come from. Yeah? Okay. That moves so fast, I didn't even see it. Okay. So we look at this. Can you see where it says Nebet Heti? Nephis. So that's her symbol. The same symbol there with the cup on top where you burn incense. Can you see that? Then we have the combination of Hawut Heru. Hawut Heru. Hawut Heru. And they say Hathor, the golden Horus within. It's the same symbol, it's just broadened with the square still in here. You understand that? So most of the temples and the house, you can see they were dealing with the feminine. Yeah? I'll say to you that the Pharaoh was fighting a female. Because they keep referring to Pharaoh, Pharaoh, Pharaoh. Alright? So here is where they use the symbol that I showed you over here. You understand? With the temple. So we use this female, sorry, that symbol, and they put it here, and they say Pa, great house. Now, I haven't seen that in Gordon's dictionary. I haven't seen that in none of the texts. I'm not saying that it might not be on temples, but I haven't seen it. So I'm using that. But to me, that's an error. The only time when Pharaoh started to be used is the time of Akhenaten. And Akhenaten moved to Amarna and built his place. And then they started talking about a great house. But none of the pharaohs before that was called Pharaoh. So the question I'm going to ask you then, do you think God knew that? God himself. When he was talking to Moses and he said, go and tell the Pharaoh Did you think that if the word Pharaoh wasn't being used, what was God saying? Do you see where it doesn't make no sense? Because you would have to name the Pharaoh, because the word wasn't in use then. It's Greek. So when they keep telling you that Joseph was, and they said Joseph used to work near Zoza, and I'm like, really? You can try and intimate what you're trying to say, but the moment you say it, I'll condemn you. So they demonize your ancestors, keep telling you about this word called Pharaoh, and I'm telling you that there is no word called Pharaoh that we ever called our kings. Yes, it was used in the later kingdom, but we still didn't use that to describe a king. That's like me coming to your house and just calling your mum the house. It doesn't make sense. It only makes sense because they're trying to hide that they can't identify these pharaohs. It doesn't even make sense that they do. Do you understand? Because when we read the literature of that pharaoh, we're like, well, when did the Red Sea part? It's not happening. And when it doesn't happen, they go, oh, maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was Amenhotep. And you read Amenhotep, you're like, it didn't happen here neither. When did it happen? It's a fable. There is no country called Egypt, as I told you before. None. There is no word in the dictionary or in the Medinetta that means Egypt. No word. So you'll see things like this. House of goodness with the cross. Can you see it? So when you put that, that's Nefer. And it's in the square, so it means good house. I've seen this online. The reason I'll take this up for a particular reason. Where else have you seen this symbol before?
Usually got a ball at the end of it.
Hmm?
A cross with a ball.
Justice.
Where?
The justice.
No.
The Queen?
We see it right there on Jesus' chest.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I was actually researching it, and I went online and somebody done this. And whoever done it was thinking like I was thinking. The other side, because I'm like, rah, they just done my work. Yeah? Because what does it mean? Nefer. It means to be good. Good, pleasant, beautiful, excellent, well done, gracious, happy, pretty to progress, favourable. Can you see why they keep showing you this image? Why would you have an image like Nefer with the top and you've got, what's this? Like barbed wire around the heart.
Thorns.
Thorns. Why would you have that?
Symbolism.
Aching heart.
Aching heart? Or have they got a hold on your heart?
Holding.
That's meant to be
Or
running
killing
his head,
him.
isn't it?
Say that again?
That's meant to be running his head, isn't it? When they was
That's correct.
when they was beating him.
That's correct. But why remove it from your head into your heart?
They're killing me slowly.
Sorry for it.
So the Nefer symbol that they're using, this is why they said the good Jesus, the good name Jesus, because this is where they're getting it from. You understand? Let's look at something. Luke 19:27. But those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me. Mark 16. And they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, but it doesn't say deadly poison anymore, it says deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So therefore, any Christian household you're in who believes in Jesus, once you get sick, you're supposed to go to them, and they can just go like that. Sickness be gone. But they can't do it. You understand? So who said these things? King Jesus.
King.
I'm saying King Jesus because he said, for those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me. So I'm asking you, Shush, did he become king?
Maybe he didn't tell no one. It was the secret.
Maybe it was a secret. Because as far as I know, he didn't become king. So both of these things here, what he's just saying, these are from Jesus' mouth. It's spurious. If I come to any one of your kids and tell them to do anything like this, you would not talk to me again. But Jesus can say it and you will try to excuse it. What does he mean when he told you to drink poison? He also said, if you believe in me, you can heal the sick. But how comes Christians are not healing the sick? If Jesus really existed, there would be no need to debate his existence, Sage. It's simple. It's simple because nobody sits down and debates whether it was Khufu who built the pyramids. They might say, well, we're not sure. Khufu might have put his name on it, but we don't debate his existence. You understand? Nobody, let me give you one more. Nobody debates whether Julius Caesar existed. Why? We have letters of him crossing the Rubicon. We have people from the neighbouring cities saying that, yeah, they've recorded that too when he was crossing the Rubicon. Jesus, I mean, he was around Jesus' time, correct? But we don't have nothing for Jesus. And because we have a Jesus that exists before this Jesus existed, and then another one that existed at the time the first Jesus existed, we don't know really which Jesus we're talking about. Hence, we have to keep debating his existence. If he already existed, and there was evidence that he existed, there would be no need for us to debate. These are colossal buildings. How did they done it? Because we were unified. Do you understand? This was our work. We look at shit and we're like, that mountain shaped funny. And our man goes, I bet you I can build a castle out of that mountain. And then we done it. You understand what I'm saying? So when they came in, they're like, who are these people? They knew who we were. Today we don't know who we were. This is why Egypt is revisited. To show you the greatness of your ancestors. Not to be knocked. And when you see people taking the Bible and knocking your ancestors, I'll always be here to defend that. Because they do it quietly. You understand? Like when you go and look up the word Pharaoh, enough people wouldn't go, oh shit, why are they calling them tyrant? They wouldn't see it. It's a small thing, but you wouldn't see it. Because that's how they demonize your ancestors. These Muslims have got nothing to do with what's been built here. That's a fact. What do we see here? We see details showing Amenhotep. Correct? But what do we see? We see Sep, Hitep, Abra, Amenhotep, or Amenhotep. Can you see that? Okay. I've got the hieroglyphics down here so you can see it plainly how they written it. But let's look at the wall, which is the primary. What do we have here? We have Jet Anti, given life forever. In his Katush, we have his name here. Can you see it? Sehotep Ibra. Does that sound familiar? Just like Ibrahim. All you have to do is add on the ham and you get Ibrahim. But why add on the ham? Because the ham means black. It's like you're saying Kemet. You say Kemet. Or they say Kam. Do you understand? The land of the blacks. So when we see the Ibra or Abra, Ham, Kam. Ibrahim. This is not stretching. This is just my saying. This is where the word Abraham comes from. That's why we can't find them in history. The heart of the ram. That's why when you see me at the British Museum, you see me standing beside the ram. Where does the Pharaoh stand? He stands in the heart of the ram. You understand what I'm saying? 76 Kings list. From Menes to Seti I. Painstaking, artistry, when the scribes were scribing down the King's list. Artistry of the King's list. Do you understand? And that's what's bothering them. Because we still have this written down in stones while we're looking on papers that can be burnt easily and their whole history will be lost. Do you understand what I'm saying? They have nothing like this. Again, you can see from that view how long the king, some of them even broken off down here, how long that king's list is. 76 kings ruling. funny that 76 works out to be 30. Again, just artifacts I'm showing you that we have. No spook out things. I was going to read some. Again, a bit more archaeology. Amunhotep III and Queen T. You look on there, you see their symbols. Nefertep, When you see Neb Tawi, the two lines, it means Lord of the two lands. Ma'atra, Neb Ma'atra. And then you'll see Teti. You'll see Teti here. Hatshepsut standing, early dynasty. She was joint rule with Thutmose III. A matter of fact, when you read her, she was one of the greatest. She wasn't the only female pharaoh they tried to portray that she was, but there was female pharaohs before her. But, you know, I kind of take to Hatshepsut because she did some shit. And a matter of fact, under her rule, she should have been slaving the Israelites, if we're going by their chronology. You understand? Again, that's one of her temples. Out of the wall, she dug that temple. You hear me? Again, in the Akan tribe in Ghana, we still have the same ceremonies. Can you see with the Ankh?
Yep.
And the Hathor helmet? This is a West African culture.
I didn't know they still do that.
They still do that today. My ex-girlfriend, she goes to Ghana a lot, and that's the kind of people she moves with, the Akan tribe. So I know to this day, they will tell you in Akan that no one's able to translate the Medinetta. They'll tell you that, and they still have the secret of it. You can still see them with the pole and the worshipping of the Queen. It's not no spook thing, bruv. This was just the way of our life. You understand? And there's Hatshepsut's temple, digged out of a wall, where millions of people are still going up there to visit today. Walking into her room.
I think I've been there.
Huh? See, I've never really been to her temple. But you can see it's amazing just by looking at it. You understand what I'm saying? So, in conclusion, what we don't find, no original manuscripts, what we have is broken stories and fables. The Bible chronology is not accurate and must be revisited. Several kilns mention in the name Pharaoh, but the word Pharaoh is not mentioned in the Medinetta, words of God. What we do find, we find a demonization of African culture and people in the Bible. We find millions of archaeological sites and artifacts evidence for Egypt, none for the Bible. Again, Epicurus, philosopher. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? That's why I kind of love philosophy. Huh?
That's real talk.
And that's the end. Uncle Justin